Now, before I bring my guest onto the podcast, I want to thank our sponsor, Careerist. Because imagine being able to work remotely, earn a six-figure salary, and finally have room to grow in a new career without having to learn how to code. That is what Careerist QA Bootcamp makes possible. And in just 4 months, you'll get live training, a 100% remote internship, and personal coaching to guide you into a tech career. Now, right now, there are 37,000 QA roles open in the US, and with starting salaries as high as $105,000, it's an attractive option for so many reasons. And Careerist graduates are already working at companies across 42 states. And if you have a quick look on Trustpilot, users over there are rating the program 4.7 stars. And here's the real clincher. It's risk-free. Land a job or get your tuition back. But seats for the next class are filling very quickly, but you'll find the link in the show notes. Please check it out. I'd love to hear how you get on. Maybe this could be your moment where you land that career in tech that you've been thinking of, or convincing yourself you don't have the right skills, because believe me, this is open to everyone. But now, back to today's show, and let's jump into the interview with my guest today. When was the last time you had any worries about your office printer or multifunctional device? Yeah, every organisation has got one of those big behemoths inside the building. Only a handful of people know how to use them. Duplex this. Do you want binded, double-sided, complex menus? Aside from that, there are very few concerns with those printers and MFDs. But printers make up as much as a third of enterprise endpoints. And almost all of them are sitting wide open for attackers. After all, a network is only as strong as the weakest device on that network. So my guest today, his name is Jim LaRoe, CEO of Symphion. He's a great guy, and he's built a business around fixing that very blind spot. Because from hospitals to Fortune 500s, his team runs Print Fleet Cybersecurity as a service. So if you remember one thing from today's episode, you want to impress your friends in the workplace, Print Fleet Cybersecurity as a service. Yeah, it's a thing. And it's protecting thousands of devices that quietly hold sensitive data and admin credentials that most of us never think about. And yet you think of all those documents and things that you're scanning on there as well. So the big question I found myself asking is, how did printers become the forgotten frontier of cybersecurity, especially in an age of zero trust? And why are hackers beginning to treat them like gold mines on wheels? And what can you do to convince your management team the scale of the risk? Well, let's find out by getting Jim onto the podcast now. A massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Neil, I'm Jim LaRoe. I'm CEO at Symphion Incorporated. We're a Dallas, Texas-based company, and we protect very large print fleets. We're currently the world leader in print fleet cybersecurity. We protect printers, print fleets ranging from a few hundred devices to tens of thousands of printers. And we're strongest in the healthcare vertical, hospital systems, but we cover other industries as well.
Wow, it's so cool what you're doing here, because one of the things I try and do every day on this podcast is get people thinking differently about how technology or cybersecurity is impacting their life or their world or work, of course. And you built Symphion into this leader in print fleet cybersecurity, but I suspect for many people listening, that is something that they don't typically think about. So what was it that first drew your attention to printers as one of the most overlooked and possibly vulnerable parts of enterprise networks?
That's a great point. Well, in 2004, we've been in business since 99. So in 2004, we built what you call a configuration management database, a CMDB, and we built agentless scanning protocols around that. And we wrapped it in a managed service, and we went to market. We were rocking along, supporting all these large-scale IT outsourcers in their need to have accurate IT asset management reporting. And in 2015, we got invited by one of the largest printer manufacturers to support their foray into IT services. And man, we came upon it was like a parallel universe to IT. We came and saw the world of printers and the $40 billion a year industry of print and managed services that they're using to service the printers. And we saw, hey, this is a whole different ball game over here. It was kind of hidden in supply chain. And, we saw a big opportunity there because we saw that the printers were not really being protected and a bunch of other things that got us to where we are now.
It's such a cool story because I think we often hear about endpoint security, but seldom about printers. So why do you think they've remained such a blind spot? Because they're inside every organization. And also, just how big is the risk for enterprises today?
Man, it's a big issue, Neil. We're evangelizing the risk here and how to fix it. It's almost like telling businesses they need to lock their doors. It's that prevalent. Nobody in these large enterprises has really owned printer security. There hasn't been a budget line item for it, for protecting them, and the printers themselves have grown up from these analog devices for 40 years managed by the contract supply chain people, and the printer OEMs have been competing with each other by adding all these incredible, business enabling features that including security features, but they're not being used on the networks. Nobody has really done what you would do with a server or a PC with the printers. In the managed print service industry, they're all focused on eliminating cost and print, yet these printers are 20 to 30% of everybody's endpoints, and they're sitting out there unprotected, unhardened, unpatched, and essentially invisible to the businesses. But they've got our most sensitive data, right? They receive, transmit, process, store the most sensitive data. They've got privileged access to the other systems that they touch. And we're going around having to basically tell people, look, man, you need to lock your door. You've got this bank of information, valuable stuff sitting on your network, and you're not doing anything.
And as you said there, 30% of an organization's endpoints can be printers, and 99% of them are unpatched or unsecured. So for people listening where we've got those light bulb moments going on here, can you unpack what makes them so attractive to cyber criminals?
And they're the softest targets, Neil. They're like gold mines on wheels for the criminal because, like I said, they receive, transmit, process, and store the most sensitive data, the customer's data, and healthcare, the patient data. They're connected to major systems like our email system, our file server, our credential system, and they oftentimes store administrator level privilege to those systems in the printer. One ethical hacker has written that they go in and they're the blue team, they're trying to figure out, or the red team, and they're trying to figure out, where they're vulnerable. He said 40% of the time we go after printers and they've stored administrator level privileges for those other systems so they can move laterally throughout the organization. And typically the printer is sitting on the corporate network at what we call factory default status. So, the manufacturers ship the device and all the ports and protocols are open. The password's set at a factory default password that somebody can go look up on the internet. They're set to phone home back to the printer manufacturer, and they're not looked at or monitored like you get a PC or a server. And the criminals know that. And they love them to go and use them as a soft target to go penetrate and move laterally inside a company.
And before you came on today, I was doing a little research on this, and I quickly learned that the issue isn't just security, it's also costs. So tell me more about how DIY printer security and vendor tools are quietly draining IT budgets, and why so many companies underestimate the hidden expenses of this too.
Well, man, everything to deal with printers is like there's this myth that printers are going away, right, with digitization. And it's partly true, but in like healthcare, we see them print more with electronic medical records. So it's like, you can't manage the the security of a print fleet on the back of a barroom napkin. It's just not possible. So we see customers, they're trying to do a do-it-yourself approach, but printers, unlike, just like the other IoT device, I see that you have some other IoT topics on your podcast here. It's like they have disparate operating systems. Computers, we have common management platforms like Windows, and there are products that, software products can manage across all the devices. Well, in printers, there are different software products that each manufacturer has for its own brand, and maybe even multiple product models in its own brand that customers try to sometimes, hey, John's not fully utilized. We'll have him do the hardening of the printers. And it's just that with the different manufacturer software. So they have to go license that software, learn how to use it, staff it to operate the software to attempt to protect the printers. We call it a cobble approach, and it's common, but it breaks things. There's outages. It's a heavy lift for them because they're not used to doing it. So that all adds up to a bunch of hidden costs from not only the software and the labor, and the result, the cost of the outages too. So it's just, there's a ton of hidden costs with that approach of do it yourself.
So as a result, at Symphion, you created this print fleet cybersecurity as a service, which combines enterprise-grade software with concierge delivery. So I've got to ask that, how does this model reduce both risk and cost for organization, especially compared to maybe traditional approaches? What is it you guys are doing differently?
Oh, great question. Okay, so basically what we did, when I told you we got exposed to the parallel universe of printers and that whole industry, we saw the disparate operating system. So we got the smartest engineers in the world, and we designed software that works across all the makes and models. Okay. And everything is related to cost, and it hasn't been done. So we built a total program that establishes, and it continues and maintains cyber hygiene for all the customers' printers. And they have to fill this gap. It includes our software, our professionals to operate the software, proven processes that, to ensure business isn't interrupted. We include management consulting in it, and we do it all for one per device affordable price. Customers have no operational lift. So man, we've made it where it's like, we've taken all the objections and put our money where our mouth is and delivered this service. We call it Print Fleet Cybersecurity as a service because that's what it is. And it's like electric service to your house. You don't really care how it's made. You just want it there when you push that blender to make that margarita. You want it to turn on, or click on the TV. You want it to turn on with that electricity. You don't really care how it's made. That's how we've developed this service for customers for Print Fleet Cybersecurity.
And before you came on, I was doing a little research, and I quickly learned that you've also worked with healthcare organizations where compliance is critical, and also it's one of the areas that are most under attack from cyber attackers now. So what role does printer security play in meeting maybe regulatory requirements like HIPAA, and what lessons can be applied to other industries, do you think?
Well, it's, we built this solution to fit each customer's IT, we call it an IT ecosystem. It's how they do business, right? And that includes their applicable regulatory structure. And, as we know, especially like in the UK with you guys and with us here in the US, regulations are increasing. People are becoming more accountable. But you've got in the States here in the United States, you've got safe harbor rules that provide, a safe harbor from lawsuits and things like that if you can show reasonable efforts to secure your enterprise. So what we've done is we've automated all that, not only the auditing piece of it, but the reporting piece of it, so that they don't have to do it. We're taking the lift off the customer with this, and we can match any regulatory requirement that they have. We support their goals regardless of the industry.
One thing we must talk about when we talk about cybersecurity is human error, another reoccurring problem. We've all seen technicians, maybe I may have done it myself in the past, resetting a device to factory defaults. I mean, how does Symphion's automation and monitoring address those kind of real world risks where people just make mistakes?
Well, that's a great question. So like, our biggest effort in cybersecurity is really, don't click on that email, right? It's
Yeah.
don't click on the email. I've got all these warnings that came off our network because it really bad things happen, right? Well, in the print industry, the muscle memory of that human behavior is to reset the device back to factory defaults after a service. So it's like you've got a technician, you've got all these say you've got 10,000 printers, okay, and you've got multiple service groups doing the work on them. And what we see on every account all the time until we've helped them get rid of that muscle memory is the technician will work on a device, even if it's hardened, and reset it back to factory. So it's like, and if they don't have a solution like ours, what we did is we built automated monitoring and remediation in it. So we're watching the controls daily, remediating them back automatically. We discover, remediate same day, record it, right? So we know when something's been changed, and those we call them reoccurrences because they're a reoccurrence of a vulnerability. But those are happening all the time, even on accounts that we're watching the devices. So, but if you don't have that sort of interval of monitoring and remediation, you're blind to it. You can have the best laid plans of mice and men, right? Set the devices, the controls that you want, harden them, not look at them for a quarter or a month. Bad things can happen. That ethical hacker I was telling you about earlier, who said 40% of the devices store the admin credentials. He's like, first thing I'm going to do is go in and take over the printer. I'm going to reset the factory, the administrator password. Customers that don't have that, they're blind to it. So it's really lip service to security and not a good, solid, basic, maintained program of cyber hygiene for these vulnerable endpoints.
And for anybody listening to this podcast during their commute to the office, there's all kind of alarm bells going off. What advice would you give them when they're going into the office to maybe raise this topic? Any big stats or anything you can leave everyone with?
Yeah, the stats we see customers all over the place. We see customers that have tried DIY that have come to us that said, "Man, we need some help in this." We've had customers that have been hacked through printers. We've been customers that have been hacked generally, and they're trying to tidy up their cybersecurity with things, the missing holes that they've had. If they want to know more about it, though, the best thing they could do is reach out to us at symphion.com or, message me on LinkedIn or message our company on LinkedIn. We're doing personalized assessment / briefings every day. They're 45 minutes. We'll give a broad level scored assessment that you could take to your board and show them, your current print fleet cybersecurity stance. And we're going to give you a 30, 60, 90-day plan to get the gap filled and a price that's a budgetary price to get it done and keep it done. So, socialization, asking questions, that assessment is designed to, self-analyze a little bit so that you can make that decision to socialize it with your company about addressing this really important need.
Well, I would add links to everything you mentioned there, make it easy for people to find out more information. And I
Yes.
cannot thank you enough for coming on, sharing your insights today. But before I let you go, I'm going to give you a chance to leave everyone listening with one final gift. Before we started recording today, we were talking about music, etc. So I've got a Spotify playlist where I ask my guests to add a song that means something to them to that Spotify playlist. So what song would you like to add and why?
Oh, Neil, you're putting me on the spot. Well, I told you I went to see Pantera last night here in Dallas, so you're from Birmingham. We talked about Black Sabbath, right? So I don't know, man. It might be a little heavy for your audience. I maybe Cemetery Gates, Pantera.
Yeah, we're going to add that.
Like that.
Yeah, love it. Well, I had a guy a few months back suggest some pirate metal. I didn't even know that was a thing. So,
Oh, I can, they had a Swedish Viking metal band there too. So it was Arman. They're one of the warm up bands last night. So
love it. Well, I'll get some Pantera added to our Spotify playlist. But more than anything, just thank you for taking the time to unpack this modern threat landscape that's exploiting printer infrastructure that many people listening may not know about, but there are proactive, low-cost paths to close those security gaps. And as we said before we started recording today, nobody's shouting about this stuff, and really grateful that you are. So thanks for joining me today.
thank you so much for having me, Neil. It's very nice to meet you. Look forward to talking to you again.
Wow, what did you make of that? Have you been walking past a security risk every single day at work without even noticing? I think Jim reminded us that printers aren't just the dusty hardware in the corner. They're unguarded entry points loaded with data, access, and a network point. And his fix is simple but powerful. Daily monitoring, same-day remediation, and a service model that strips out the hidden costs of DIY security. And before we wrap, Jim also left his mark on our Spotify playlist with Pantera's Cemetery Gate. So I'm going to be getting that on there to liven that playlist up a little. But the question I'll leave you with is, what would you like to add to that list? Any song you want me to add to the Spotify playlist, book that you want me to add to our Amazon wish list? Let me know what gets you ready to face the day, and I'll add that too. techblogwriteroutlook.com, techtalksnetwork.com too. Let me know, and I'll get straight back to you. But that is it for today. So thanks for listening as always, and I'll speak with you again bright and early tomorrow. Bye for now.